Hello everyone, Colin here for WoodWorkWeb. Today I'm going to talk about jigs. I get so many questions, people asking about jigs, and today we're going to spend some time on talking about and showing you some of the jigs that I use. Using jigs is really an individual thing. It depends on the kind of woodworking that you're doing as to what jigs you're going to need. Now, a jig in woodworking some people will make a jig, some woodworkers will make a jig for one cut or for one build that they're making. Other people will make a jig because it's easy for them to replicate, to make multiples of. It really depends what it is that you're doing and what kind of builds and what kinds of projects you're making. But today I'm going to show you 3 or 4 of the most popular jigs that I use all the time for the kinds of builds that I use. And you've seen some of them, but I seldom stop and talk about them, take the time, but that's what I'm going to do today. I'm not even going to show you how to make these. These jigs are so easy to make. I'm going to give you good detailed pictures or good detailed video of what these things look like, and you will be able to go out and make these for yourselves if it's the kind of thing that will help you in your woodworking. The first jig I'm going to show you is my center finding jigs, and I'll show you some details in a second of these. I am always cutting something in half, cutting boards in half. I don't know, I seem to be always cutting boards in half, and I used to measure from here to here and then divide by 2 and try and get a detail. But you know what? There's a jig for that, and I've made one of those years ago that I use all the time. In fact, I remade this one just for this video because my other one was worn out. And all it is a couple of dowels, and we'll detail in a minute, a couple of dowels, and in this case I've got a pencil in the middle because I like to see the marks. And all you do is put it on your wood and put the top on one side, the bottom on another, and there it is there. And it will give you a perfect center line. So there's my smaller board, and I've just normally when I'm cutting these in half they're already plain. That's why I've switched to this board. So here's the small one, and I use this all the time, and I use this for splitting boards like that, and it works the same way. You just put it on one side so you can see that it's on that side there, and on the other side there the dowels are just touching, and all you do is drag it down just like that. And that gives you a perfect line to follow in the middle, and that will split your board right exactly in the middle. You run the middle of your blade right down that. Now if your jig is offset a little bit, sometimes you can use it on both sides, and it'll give you 2 very close lines, and that way you can be even more accurate because you can split the difference of those 2 lines. So that's a great little tool, and I use that for ripping boards and getting more wood out of them. Now all you need is some doweling. You could put bolts through there. That would work actually even better because I tend to wear these out, especially this little one. I use this all the time. But you could put bolts through there, but all you need to do is measure a full distance. And this one, I thought it was 17. It's a little over 16. But all you do is mark, for example, there's one end, there's 16, and half of 16 is 8 inches. That's all you need to do is mark 3 things, drill a hole, and you don't have to worry about inside or outside, none of that stuff. You drill a hole big enough that the dowel will fit into snugly on each side, and then drill another hole in the middle that your pencil will fit in, or whatever. Maybe you want to use a nail or something through there. You can use anything. And that's it. Put it together and it's done. You can make them in different sizes. I use this one a lot for my wider boards. This one, of course, I use for edges, and they work great. And you do the same thing with this one. Just measure out what a convenient size is for you, and instant centers, and that's all it takes. Here's another, I guess it's a jig, at least an appliance that I use all the time. All it is, I like using MDF because it's nice and flat, and you can often get cutoffs at different places, and this was just a cutoff from somewhere. It's nice and smooth on one side, and you know what? I used this Elmer's spray adhesive. It works perfect. You spray a little bit on the back of your sandpaper and a little bit on the according to the directions anyway, a little bit on the wood. You let it sit for like 20 seconds or something and you put it on and it sticks great. But I use this all the time for little things that I'm making. You can do round things. It helps flatten things out. Just a really handy thing. I've seen some people that will put a couple of different grits. This I've only got on one side, and it's an 80 grit that I put on there. But you could do that too. You could put a couple of different grits on different sides if you wanted to do that. I use this thing all the time. Here's another jig that I use a lot. Now, woodworking is a lot of building boxes, and of course we like to get square corners, and there's a few ways of getting square corners. This is one way of doing that, and I use this for picture frames, I use this for boxes, and basically if all of your sides are equal, you only need to true up two sides. And if you look at this closely, you'll notice that there's a hole under here, and of course a hole under here as well. So I've lifted this up just by putting some material underneath there so that these woods are lifted up. And the reason for that is so that I get something under there. So that in case I get some sawdust or something, it's not going to impede the two pieces coming together. So, and I only have two pieces here because it's just a demo. So when I put these in, I can true them up exactly the way they need to be. Well, now we've moved over to the table saw, and there's our little sort of corner. You can call this a frame or a corner of a box. We're going to cut some splines in that, and that's what this little jig is, and it's a spline cutter. And I've designed it so that it runs over top of my fence. Now you can have it, when I didn't have a wide fence like this, I just had it so it would ride beside it, and that worked actually very well, because if you have it so that it's flat on the table and it rides up against the fence, it can't really flop around anywhere. This is just a little bit more secure if you've got a thicker table like this. And I'll show you detail of what this thing is. So like most jigs, it's just constructed out of plywood or spare materials that you have laying around. The only other thing is to make the back of it, and this piece of wood here was just a little bit bigger. There's no reason that it needs to be higher. It just happened to be a little bit taller and I didn't cut it off. This is the only one you need to cut, the center one, because it needs to be the width of your fence. And just need to put it on there to slide back and forth. But here's a little tip too. This one, I've had this in my storeroom, and it's a little bit damp in there, and the wood has swollen a little bit, so that when I put this on here, it was really tight to move back and forth. And all I did was take apart these screws and put a little bit of veneer. It's always nice to have a little bit of veneer around. Took it apart, put a little strip of veneer right in this area, right in here, and now it fits perfectly again on my table saw. And to set it up, all we need to do, I've already got a couple, you can see I've already got a couple of things in, so I'm just going to line it up with one of those, and we'll just make a cut, and it's pretty easy to do that. I think my blade's a little bit high. That should run through. That's pretty close. It may not run through. It's going to cut a little bit. And all I wanted to do, you can actually check the height when you look through the blade when you see it on this side here. So I'm not going to cut it too deep. So now I'm just going to run it through once just to get make sure the blade clears this. Well, there's the cut. I was going to make a second cut, but it looks like this one's almost in the middle. And there you have it. For those of you who've been asking, those are some of the jigs that I use a lot, and I do have a few more tricks up my sleeve. I've got some other jigs that we're going to be using, doing some demos in the future, but this was just a bit of a sampling to show you some stuff that I use that I find really handy, that I use all the time, and maybe give you some ideas for things that you might be able to use in your shop. So I'm Colin for WoodWorkWeb. Don't forget, subscribe if you haven't already. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and stay tuned because we got lots more things coming your way.